Now, turmoil and power shifts grip Africa's heartlands. In Mali, the transitional government cracks down after a failed coup attempt, dismissing top generals and accusing a French national of involvement, a move deepening tensions with Paris. And in South Sudan, President Salva Kiir fires his army chief after just 3 months in office, reinstating his predecessor and fears of renewed instability in the fragile nation. I am Precious Amayo. This is What Now? Mali's transitional leader, General Assimi Goïta, has dismissed a dozen high-ranking military officers following what authorities call a failed coup attempt in August. According to a presidential decree made public Wednesday, the officers, including Brigadier General Abbas Dembele and Nema Sagara, were removed from service for their alleged roles in what officials described as a subversive act on August 1st, 2025. The Security Minister, Major General Daoud Ali Mohammedin, said the plot was thwarted by specialized forces, with investigations now underway to uncover other collaborators. In a new twist, authorities also accused a French national, Yann Christian Bernard Vizilier, of actively participating in the failed coup, a claim likely to further strain relations between Mali and France. This marks the latest in a series of military purges under Goïta, underscoring his struggle to tighten control over a divided army amid ongoing security and political instability. Now in South Sudan, President Salva Kiir has once again reshuffled the country's top military leadership, dismissing Army Chief Dao Atudong after just 3 months in office and reinstating his predecessor Paul Nang Majok. The move, announced on state television without explanation, as to a long list of abrupt changes in Kiir's administration. Atudong has now been reassigned as a technical advisor to the Defense Ministry. Analysts say the decision reflects Kiir's efforts to maintain control on rival factions within the military amid growing internal tensions and ongoing conflict. The shake-up comes as South Sudan's fragile transitional government faces renewed instability, with Vice President Riek Machar battling treason charges, raising fears of another round of civil unrest. Now, joining us to discuss this development and what they mean for stability across African governments, two seasoned African affairs analysts, Paul Ejime. He's a former international journalist and communications consultant, and Dr. David Matsanga, the political commentator and Pan-African strategist. They'll be sharing insights on the unfolding situation in Mali and South Sudan and the broader question: why do leadership transitions in parts of Africa so often trigger instability? Good to have you both join us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Precious. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for inviting me first time.
Let me begin with you, Paul Ejime, as to just what you make of what's going on in Mali and South Sudan. I mean, this pattern of military purges and what they signal.
There's nothing surprising. I think the French will say that, you know, what do they call it? It's the more things change, the more they remain the same. You know, that is what is happening for Guinea. For Mali, it's expected that at one point after the what you call honeymoon, taking power is easier than you know, running an administration. And that is what the government there is seeing. Deja vu, that's the word I was looking for. So now they have, you can see there are cracks now in the administration. That's why you are having these coups. There will be more coups and counter coups, and because people will disagree. Remember, in some places, for instance, in the so-called AES Alliance for Sahel States, there was one in Burkina Faso where you now have Traoré. He removed a lieutenant and then took over. He removed a colonel and took over as whatever it is that he is. So that is the same thing happening in. It's not the first time that Assimi Goïta in Mali will be going through what is passing through. There will be many attempts on his life, and if he's lucky, he can survive many, but who knows when his time will be up. The same thing for where Sudan, or even where all the places. When South Sudan came, there was jubilation as the newest state in Africa. But while they're moving out, self-determination, leaving the bigger or mother Sudan to become a smaller one. But they have also found that governance is not the same thing as taking power. So they cannot sustain it, and that is why we're having all these problems. And that is the problem, the lack of good governance, and then bad leadership that is manifesting across many African states. And that is what is happening. So some say there is problem with democracy in where you have civilian administration, but military administration is not the answer.
So let me bring in Dr. Matsanga. I want, because you said a lot of things, Paul, to me that we will unpack, especially because now one is a democracy, the other is a military rule, and yet both have problems. I will look at that more broadly. But Dr. Matsanga, I see you smiling there, both democracy and military having issues within Africa. I mean, I just want to get your thought on that in terms of what it means for how we govern, and then what this also signals for South Sudan.
First of all, let me touch my great country, Mali. I am one of the few people who is impressed by the record of the way Mali has been fighting insurgents sponsored by the French. I speak my mind. Brother, don't worry. I speak my mind in Africa. When you take a coup in a French country, expect a counter coup. History has it. History has it. Nguema came in Equatorial Guinea, you saw. Congo Brazzaville, you saw. Togo, you saw. You see, the French have a policy. They never left us. 400 years over, they have never left us. They want us done. You see what I have told these younger generals around the Sahel region. I've visited Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger. I'm always there. I told them, be careful about the French. You have decided to terminate their livelihood. France is nothing without Mali, Sahel region. France is zero. In fact, it's one of the poorest countries in Europe if it did not have these colonies. Leave alone Britain, that is well established in terms of international links. France is nothing. So you expect a counter coup. I agree with my brother here. You must expect that they will get someone, another general, or another captain, or another lieutenant to take you down. Now it also proves what Dr. Matsanga has been saying all along, that the French sponsor terrorism also, because they don't want that terrorism to go away. You see what has been keeping
Dr. Matsanga, that's a very strong allegation to make, but
there is evidence now.
Well, I'm staying with you just a minute, Dr. Matsanga, because when we make this kind of allegations, we need to have just a minute. We need to have proof to it. But I wanted to ask you, just a minute, Dr. Matsanga, please, just a minute, because you're talking about Mali, right? There is also South Sudan, and that's not a coup. That's not a French, colony. And so I'm wondering, in terms of South Sudan, doesn't that also indicate generally for Africa that government is transitional, and when you overstay your welcome, and there is bound to be moves, in terms of dissent to get you out?
I was coming to South Sudan, thank you. But I will give you evidence on why I say some of the terrorism in the Maghreb area, that area of Sahel Maghreb is sponsored by countries that don't like the Army generals. I'm telling you, I'll give you evidence. You are talking to a researcher. I'm not a mere commentator. I'm a real man who studied that subject up to the end. So let me tell you about Sudan. The problem of Sudan is the two leaders, Salva Kiir and Riek Machar. In fact, they better get out of it. If I were the Sudanese myself, I'm a neighbor, they better get off. These are the two men who have bickered like we don't want to underrate that women bicker. In fact, women bicker better. But the two leaders, Riek Machar and Salva Kiir, have bickered until they have brought South Sudan to where it is. Every time we try to resolve this conflict, my sister, it will never go away. Now he has dismissed the army general. He has locked up his friend on charges, trumped up charges of murder. In Africa, this type of things will not make us have any peace at all. We can't develop. Sudan has a lot of oil, my sister. But if you go there, some civil servants have never received the salary for 4 years. So what type of country is this? What type of country is this? This civil strife must stop in order for countries to develop, to unite. You can't unite when there is civil strife. So the question of South Sudan, which I know very well, because I did peace process there between Konyi and the President Museveni. It was me who made South Sudan work, removed the troops of LRA out of South Sudan into the Equatorial Congo. That is when South Sudan was formed, was born. Now, today, I feel ashamed to see the two generals fighting over differences of tribes, because one is Dinka, another one is Nure. No. Why?
All right, Dr. Matsanga, let me put you on hold. Apologies. I want to quickly bring Apology back into the conversation. You've listened to Dr. Matsanga. I mean, both countries say military purge, but different circumstances. Do you think that this is a case of leaders who overstay their welcome, or this is a case of foreign interference, as Dr. Matsanga talked about?
Thank you, Precious. And let me say jambo to my brother, Dr. Matsanga. I think it's a combination of what you have mentioned and more. There is what you call internal and then external forces factors. Internal factors have to do with the fact that not only that they are overstaying, they are not delivering, because they come in there promising heaven and earth, but they never do so. You know, when it wasn't Silva Key Silva Key was always fighting the man who fought for South Sudan before he died in a helicopter, and then the rulership fell on him. Since then, now he doesn't know how to deal with opposition. You know, we do not know how to manage our diversity, whether it is ethnic, whether it is religious, whatever it is. That is our problem, inability or failure to manage or harness our diversity. Diversity should not be a source of problem. That I come from this ethnic group or this religious group or whatever shouldn't be a problem. In fact, it gives you, like Nigeria, it gives you, you have variety of ideas, of intellectuals, of resources to tap from. But what do? Politicians or even military, they come and use it to divide the people. That is what is happening. There is the internal crisis that you have talked about.
I would have to put you on hold. Apologies, I have to put you on hold. You will continue that thought. We need to go on break. When we return, you will continue from the internal crisis. All right, stay with us, everyone. We'll take a break now and return in just a moment. Thanks for staying with us, everyone. You're watching What Now as we discuss the military purge in Mali after the coup in August 2025. And then South Sudan's leadership reshuffle also in the military. And we're looking at what that means for just the broader governance in Africa. We've been speaking with Paul Ejime, who is an international journalist. I don't think ever former journalist, an international journalist and communications consultant. And also we have Dr. David Matsanga, who is a political commentator and Pan-African strategist. Thank you, gentlemen, for staying with us. Just before the break, Paul Ejime, you were speaking to the internal crisis. I'll just give you another 2 minutes to wrap that up so we can bring in Dr. Matsanga.
Yes, I'm glad that you have corrected yourself that there is no former journalist.
Absolutely. It was a journalist, always a journalist.
I am still a reporter, actually a reporter. I reported war before, and then war has never ceased in the world. So anyway, back to what we were discussing. The internal crisis, like I mentioned, is this inability to manage our, diversity and concentrate on not get distracted into by other things, but concentrating to make the people deliver on what is the governance is about, is to make the life of your people better, to secure them from internal and external aggression, to provide for them education, hospital services, infrastructure, and all that. These people have failed to do. Yes, there is internal interference. But, you know, in my place, they say the rat at home that tells the rat in the bush that there is somewhere food in the house. So I'm not going to dwell on the fact that these people are trying to meddle in our affairs. They will always do so. The onus and responsibility becomes for us Africans to not be diverted, because some of them are doing what they are doing because they cannot be trusted. There is mutual mistrust in Africa. They would rather put the money they are stealing from their country in foreign banks. And the governments of these banks, they know. And so they hold them at ransom. They use blackmail. That is what is happening. So we are responsible for both the internal and then external interference is what is happening in Africa. And we should stop and think, what is it that is happening that after 60 years, anyway, South Sudan is not up to that. But the others are more than 60 years of so-called independence. Why are we still bemoaning the fact of, yes, we know that during colonialism, during slave trade and others, we suffered. But we cannot begin to dwell on that we do not now think about our future.
All right, let me quickly bring in, absolutely, and just where you landed is where I want to bring in Dr. Matsanga from, thinking about our future. And many would say that, look, the African Union, Dr. Matsanga, seem to be missing in all of this. Paulo Jimmy also spoke to the loopholes. He talked about, he used the African proverb, it is the rat that it's in the house that tells the one outside that there's something there. I mean, when you look at the DR Congo, it is the neighboring countries that are the challenge and not necessarily foreign interference. And so what does that say about, just the African Union and its ability to hold the continent together?
My sister, do you know the word called D-E-A-D? D-E-A-D, dead. African Union is dead. It's captured. It's on paper. You are talking about what? This guy, the chairperson of African Union, likes meetings and photos. But if you ask him exactly what he has to do to solve these problems, he can't. He has never been to Mali. He has never gone there to say, let's talk about how you will come back to democracy. They haven't. African Union is dead. Think about something else. To Matsanga, don't tell him about African Union, because I lost hope. I lost hope. I've been singing, and I think you have seen me on several television stations. Paul, you have seen me singing about African Union. I've gone to say, what do we do if Nyerere, Sekou Touré woke up from their graves and saw what is happening at Addis Ababa? They will just die twice. First of all, there is no African Union which can spearhead us anywhere. African Union is the rat inside, tells Qatar, come and help us. Let's use Paulo's analogy. The rat, come and help us in Congo. How can you ask someone when you are the continent which should hold power and say, come, Qatar, can you come and sit here? We want you to help to do ABCD. This is our process. We follow instead of them following us. So African Union, cut it off. Let me come to what do we do in the future. What do we need to do? 40 years ago,
Dr. Matsanga, I would let you speak to that in just a moment. I want to bring it again, Paulo Jimmy, because as we wrap now, I have about 4 minutes left. I'll split between both of you, maybe to 2 minutes. Cameroon will be voting. I mean, the election is on October 12th, which is, I think, Wednesday. Saturday. And then I'm wondering what you make of Paul Biya, who is running again after how many years in office, and what that means, again, as you also make your recommendations in terms of how we proceed from here, what that means for that country, and how do we proceed from here as a continent?
Not just the country, but the whole of the continent, because he represents the poster boy of what is happening in Africa, that we are here We have millions of young people who have bright ideas, but they are not allowed to take up 92 or 93. He's even campaigning on with using status. He can't stand. He's not aware of where he is. The wrong country is running on autopilot. He spends much of his time in Switzerland. So is that the kind of thing that Africa wants? Many people in Cameroon, they have never known any other leader. In fact, Africa as a whole, you ask anybody, any history student in Africa, they have always known Paul Biya as the president. After he took over from the independent president. So that is not, even if you have all the ideas, you cannot monopolize intelligence or governance. Leave the stage for others to try their luck. Because that is what we have seen. Third term syndrome, sit tight people in government, in power, and so on, and corruption, and so on and so forth. It's not helping any country, it's not helping the continent, and it will not help anybody. So unless they change and then begin to govern, African leaders are not governing. They are taking care of themselves against, at the expense of their people. All right.
I want to give the last few minutes a minute or two thereabout to Dr. Matsanga, as you also get your thought on the election in Cameroon, and then how do we again proceed from here as a continent in terms of governance?
First of all, let me make my stand that 40 years ago, China was the poorest country on the continent of Africa with one rice scheme in my country, Uganda. Paulo, you know that. And they were feeding on our rice halfway. Today, China went back. Africa needs to go back to renaissance. We need a renewal. Everybody in Africa needs a renewal. Even in Nigeria, where you are, you need a renewal. Unless you go back to a drawing board, we are in trouble. Two, on the question of Mr. Paulo, there are some names that make me cry tears, like a Paulo Biya in the book in Cameroon. This is a man, and the African Union has sent their observers. You are observing elections over dead bodies. Commonwealth, I am the one who has said Cameroon should be sent out of Commonwealth. The King of England cannot sit and watch people doing an election over dead bodies, people kidnapped, abducted, taken, jailed for life. We have 10 professors who were abducted from Abuja, the Nera 10. Paulo, you know that. They were taken, sentenced to life. They are there, political prisoners, 3,000 of them. So what election are you talking about? Which Dr. Matsanga, don't let me, there are some countries I don't want to hear in Africa. In fact, I regret why I was even born black, because I shouldn't have been either purple and stayed somewhere. Some countries in Africa are a shame, like Paulo Biya. He doesn't even know whether he's in Washington or he's in Yaoundé. He said, where am I? And he wants power. At least for me in my country, my president knows where he is. He doesn't, he's still there. He knows. Thank you very much. Oh, there is no election sister, let me finish.
We do have to. You have to say a few seconds.
There is no election in Cameroon. There is a blood-stained election in Cameroon. Full stop.
Thank you so much, Dr. Matsanga, who is a political commentator and Pan-African strategist, and also Pauline Jimmy, who is an international journalist and communications consultant. Thank you to both of you. Your passion for the continent shines through your analysis. A pleasure to have you both.
Thank you very much for calling.
I hope my brother will not be angry with my own poll. I hope you with all the polls.
No,
All right, we do have to leave it there. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. You've been watching What Now? This is a program on TVC News where we look at African affairs, international affairs, as well as geopolitics. I am Precious Amayu. Thank you so much for watching.